Welcome to another Retro Crazy. This is my Amiga A1200 restoration video series part 3, and I'm going to look at the A1200 power supply and also the mouse, and should give us plenty of time, I hope, to get on to actually test the 1200 and make sure everything's fine. This video has taken a little bit longer to do. Unfortunately, when I went looking for a cap kit, I couldn't find somebody that actually had a cap kit, so I've had to order the capacitors separately from a number of different retailers and sellers, and it's taken a while to get because I tend to only deal with Panasonic and Nichicon capacitors because they're good quality. So let's have a look inside before we do anything. Well, those were some of the toughest screws I've had to remove from plastic. That was not a nice experience. So if we carefully lift the lid, there we go. Now the casing itself, I'm going to clean up in exactly the same way as I did with the previous casing for the 1200. I'm going to wash it in hot water with some Vanish. The cables for the first 6 inches near both ends I'll clean with isopropyl alcohol, and then the main run of cable I'll use SIF, used to be known as GIF in the UK. That'll get all of this griminess off and make the cables nice and clean again. So looking inside, 1, 2 screws still holding in this power supply. There's 2. Well, actually 3, because there's one hidden underneath this cable. 4. There's one hidden under the other cable as well. Excellent. And now we should be able to lift everything out. So as I say, these will go to the side. They'll get a good clean, and we'll work on this. So immediately we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 capacitors that we need to look at and replace. So it's going to be exactly the same as normal. A little bit of heat. I'm simply going to desolder each capacitor and replace them one at a time. You've seen it done before, so I'll quickly batter through and see you when done. So the more astute among you will note that these two caps have not been replaced. That's a failing on my part. I'm going to have to reorder caps. I thought I had ordered more of these 1000 UF 10 volt caps. Seems I only ordered one and I needed 3. But I managed to order more of the 330 UFs than I actually needed. So yeah, just happens, one of those things. So everything else has been done, new thermal paste on the new transistor. Let's just find out what happens now when everything is reassembled and we check the voltages. I have checked the caps and they are very, very close. That one's actually 1 UF above what it says, which is phenomenal. Here is that one I've just checked, and let's see what it says. $948, fine, absolutely fine. So that probably didn't need replaced, but it's old, let's do it anyway. Well, let's pop it back in its case, which has been cleaned, and see what happens. Last to check, see what outputs we get from this power supply. Fingers crossed. So power back on, and as I remember, it should be up here for 5 volts. For ground. Now this is particularly hard to do when you're actually holding it like this. So I'm going to try and do this without shorting anything. That's, yeah, not easy. Yeah, not sure I'll be able to do this. I'm not used to one-handed checking, and I'm not sure I'm particularly happy. I'm going to use the third hand tool and actually put it between my knees to hold it, so I can then use the leads. So that's low, it should be 12 volts negative. A little bit low, it's 12 volts positive. And there's the 5 volts, which a little bit high but fine. Now that could be down to just the last capacitors needing replaced, but certainly stable enough. Whether it works or not, that's another story. Still not sure I'm happy with it being quite as low on the negative 12, but not sure if the Amiga needs a load on it to get a stable voltage reading. Normally I would expect it to be higher. Well, nothing more I can do then until I get the next set of capacitors, so we'll move on to the next step. Looking at the mouse, it's in very, very poor condition, so we're going to have to do something about this. It's got pry marks at the back. It looks like somebody's actually tried to pry it open rather than locate the screws and remove it. So we're going to go in and we're going to see just how much damage is done. I mean, you can hear how rough that is. I tried peeling an edge and it's so sticky. It's going to have to be opened and properly cleaned. So let's just cut through this tape here and see what we can get. This is particularly disgusting. Oh, it's a very old masking tape, and immediately you can see it opening. you know something has gone very wrong because it shouldn't open. That's probably telling me that I don't think the screws are missing, I think they're snapped. So we'll have to see what we can do about that. Oh dear goodness. Oh, think about the worst lolly you can get, and it's not pleasant. Everything's tacky, and the colour is a mix between age and somebody's finger juice. It's disgusting. Oh, yeah, this is not pleasant. Oh dear goodness. Oh, that quiet bit was for those that like AMSR, but this is yeah, it's a bit tacky. So I think that's the worst of it off. The front still appears to be attached. Do we have any screws under the pads? The answer will be no, so I will need to reattach the pads. I'll maybe glue that back in. Oh, turn that to the open position. Oh my goodness, yeah. The colour of the ball, it's all disgusting. Yeah, this has been forced beyond what it was designed to go through. Yeah, so it looks like there's a screw hole there and maybe another one there. Oh, everything is just disgusting, and I can't see how this pops off. If there's no screws under there, you would think it would pull back. It does. It's just old. Oh, yeah, that's disgusting. That's going for a good soak. We can see this one still has a screw in it that's been ripped off. And yeah, that one's still got the screw in it as well, and that one's been ripped off. We'll try gluing them. We'll see what happens. Now, it's a very basic system. You've got two buttons to act as switches. That switches. Not feeling the healthiest. That one's still fine. We've got one connector, which we'll maybe see about removing, and then we've got the carriage for the ball. Now, what it should have is a series of holes in the wheel. Let me zoom down. So you should be able to see a series of holes in the wheel, and as the wheel turns, it breaks a light beam, and that tells the mouse which direction it's moving. Now, this is an old style before they went to scanning lasers. This was the weak point, because any of this that's on the top of the desk or whatever you were using it on would get picked up by the wheel, and you can actually see down in here just how disgusting that is. Yeah, so I'm going to take all this out. These will still need to come, and then we can look at de-stickifying it. And then hopefully once it's back together, we'll see if it's still running when we test the system. He said hopefully. So there you go. That is it. Most of the components are on the underside. A lot of surface mount there. Oh, it's absolutely disgusting. Now, I am not sure if we can just unclip this and get it to lift off. It would be very handy if it could, because it means we can clean it a bit easier. That side's lifted. I don't know how the LEDs are done. It looks like they just sit up covered in there, so we'll try. Looks like it's coming. And there you go. Your transmitters and receivers. I'll give everything a clean up, but as I say, that switch feels dead. There's no spring in it. Don't know if you can hear that, but that one is no response. So that one needs replaced. I'm not sure if I've got one in stock. I'll need to have a look. So let's get these soaked, cleaned, and see what we can do. Process I'm going to use for the casings is going to be exactly the same as we used for the main A1200. No difference. What I am going to try and do is carefully peel this, see if I can do it without damaging the label. Ugh, still got that stuck to it. I'm going to carefully put this to the side. It's still quite sticky and should be able to reuse it. Let's remove the last turret. And now we have all our parts. Let's take them all and try and, well, do something with them. I'm going to give this a good scrub as well. So, see you shortly. So now that these are all cleaned up, lots of scrubbing and a lot of use of isopropyl alcohol, but now they're no longer sticky. They are still damaged. So I'm going to address this first. Now, it's very difficult to do much with this. What I am going to do is just take a flat blade of a screwdriver and I'm just going to run it across and push everything back into shape. It has been pried, it's never going to be perfect, but what we're trying to do is push the material back where it came from. Now I can see the cut runs in this, that direction. So I'm going to pull it back the opposite way, or try to. Now it's not a perfect method, it's never going to be 100%. You've just got to try and do the best you can. It is possible to use some heat to remelt it, but I'm not a great fan because I tend to just melt things instead, making them worse. That is a particularly bad one and I don't think I'm going to be able to do too much. I'm going to use the round edge now and just run it over. Try and get some more of it done. And I'm just going to go around the entire edge of both this and the top and see what we can get done. Right, I've been round the entire shell. It's now not really obtrusive anymore. There's no jaggy bits. Let's quickly fix the casing next. So we're just going to use some super glue and, for speed, some activator. The way both of these are broken, there are distinctive points on them that I can see which match up with certain points inside, so it's not going to be too difficult a job to do. Right, while not a perfect job, that's everything done, and hopefully those two halves will go together reasonably well. He said hopefully. I can see the holes lining up, and there we go. They do line up, tighter fit. And that's them now ready, just waiting for the last bits to be cleaned. That's already done. If you remember, it was mottled. It's now come out rather nice and clean. So let's do the rest. So looking at this mechanism, we can see that the tensioner for the ball comes out, and there is a spring at the back of it. So I'm just going to lift that out with the spring, and that has a lot of gunk in it as well. I could push these out, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to clean them in situ, especially bits of fluff which are sat around the wheels for governing everything. So isopropyl alcohol, cotton buds, and here we go. And we're done. Everything's now nice and clean, moving freely, no resistance. The entire mechanism's done, and you can see by the amount that has come off every single piece, everywhere. Every bit of dirt and grime that's come out. So that just leaves reassembly for the mechanical side. So as for the micro switch, I don't have one at the moment. I'm going to have to order one up. So I'm just going to reassemble everything and pop it back into the case, just temporarily. And there we go, one mouse back together. The main flex, like I did with the power supply, I'm just going to clean down here with isopropyl, and I'll clean this section with isopropyl, and then the middle section I can go back to using something more effective and quicker, and that will be the mouse done for the moment. The sticker's still to go on, but not until I've replaced the button. As you can hear, nothing at all from that distinctive click from this side though. So as far as the mouse is concerned, other than replacing that switch, done. Well, here we are at the moment of truth. The replacement capacitors turned up for the power supply, so they've now been fitted. Everything's plugged in. We just need to power on now and actually find out if this works. So big moment, does everything work? Does everything blow up? Let's find out. So here we go with the mains on. And now for the power brick. We have lights on the Amiga, which is always a good sign, but the AV hasn't actually been set up yet. However, I can hear it polling the disk drive, so far things are looking good. So apologies for the bad picture. I'm having to use currently an RF to AV converter because I'm having difficulty actually getting my OSSC to run properly. So I'm relying on this temporarily. So let us have a look. As you can see, Microprose Grand Prix, big favourite of mine. Let's find out what happens. So good news, the disk is recognised. And by the looks of it, it's loading. Mechanism's nice and quiet. And there, I think, is the definitive proof that the A1200 has been successfully recapped. The power supply has been done. It's just going to be a shame that the mouse is fairly dead. Unfortunately, I think the audio on this is corrupt. Oh yeah, it's not picking up the audio correctly. However, that's not down to the Amiga, that's down to this RF to AV converter I'm using, unfortunately. So you can see it's all possible using a standard soldering iron. It's still running away quite merrily. That noise brings back a lot of memories. Unfortunately, I do not have a copy of Workbench, so that's something I'm going to have to track down, which is a bit annoying, but such is life. And for anybody that remembers this, here's a classic bit of animation, which, let's face it, at the time was well beyond most other things on the market. And I spent hours wasted playing this, especially in the multiplayer mode, because you could do turnabout, so it wasn't uncommon for 5 or 6 of us to get together and do a Grand Prix, taking turnabout with the AI learning how you played. So there we go, definitive proof that the 1200 is running. But is that the end of the story? Well, I said there was more to go, and ironically I was right, but not for the reasons I thought. As I finished recording that segment and ejected the disk from the Amiga 1200, there was a pop from the power supply, and the result was a clearly blown capacitor. on the input side, luckily. It didn't affect the 1200, it was still running, but obviously the capacitor was not happy. And it turns out, user error. I actually fitted that one capacitor the wrong way around. So I had the positive and negative swapped. Fully my fault. It's now been replaced. Everything appears to be fine, thankfully. But the reason I said is at the end is because, well, I got some bits and pieces. This is the end at the moment of the A1200 restoration. I hope you enjoyed it. If you do, and if you did, please remember to like and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next Retro Crazy.